Invisible infrastructure and quiet default settings are increasingly shaping how our world actually works, from where your attention goes to what products get built. This week, we're looking at the patterns that keep repeating, the notifications you can't turn off, the cloud GPUs that are now behind your next car, and the fitness apps that are supposed to keep us healthy but instead put us in danger. In each case, a small technical choice made by a handful of people ripple out into money, power, and sometimes even national security. This week, we're not just covering gadgets and apps, we're unpacking how those hidden decisions turn into bets on your behavior, your job, and even your safety. As a journalist turned tech founder, here are the stories that stopped my scroll this week and reading between the lines what they mean for you. Coming to you again from on the road, another hotel room. First up, we have to talk about if your phone's default settings are hurting your wallet. A new study found that gamblers who turned off their marketing notifications placed 23% fewer bets and spent 39% less money than those who kept their notifications on. Same people, same apps, and over just 2 weeks, the No Marketing Group also reported 67% fewer short-term gambling harms, like feeling distressed or out of control. And because this was a randomized control study and not just an observational survey, the researchers were able to prove causation and not just correlation. This is great news for helping people who suffer from gambling addictions. This isn't just about gambling. Lots of apps. I bet if you look at your phone right now, many of them have sent you these helpful little notifications to let you know that you need to sign into your language learning app to keep your streak going, or that thing in your cart is now 20% cheaper, or the markets are volatile and you should log into your stock market app and take a look. Most of the time, we are opted into these notifications by default, which brings us to the question of at what point do these notifications and marketing pushes cross the line from being helpful or maybe neutral into harmful territory. For now, it's up to us users to decide if we find it helpful or if we're being manipulated. And if you're unsure and just don't want to be steered in any direction, go into your phone settings and opt out of marketing notifications wherever you can. Your next car might have been designed in the metaverse. And before we go and talk about what headset it was designed on, that's actually not the most important part. The most important part is the GPU. We were just at GTC, which is the tech nerd equivalent of the Super Bowl, and we got to see NVIDIA's Cloud XR streaming workstation class RTX graphics straight to the Apple Vision Pro for ourselves. With this configuration, the headset effectively just acts as a display, and all of the heavy 3D rendering happens on a remote server. So what was interesting about this story and seeing this happen in real life is that Apple is already talking about Kia, which is the car manufacturer that they partnered with for this first kind of activation. And that tells us that they already found product market fit. So they found product market fit with this customer, and then they went out and built the product. And this is the opposite to what most entrepreneurs have to do, where they build the product first and then they iterate on the product until they find the right market niche. But with this particular problem set, Apple and NVIDIA couldn't just go build an app. They actually had to build a structural solution. And they did this because one of the biggest problems with headsets, with any headset, is rendering. And to solve it, you can either go with lower quality graphics or you tether to a PC. And then Apple came in and said, what if we just stream it all? If the resulting statistics are true, Apple now beats everything on the market with a 120 frames per second refresh rate on the Apple Vision Pro. So if you hear that and you're like, well, what headset is next? If I were on the Meta Ray-Ban's display team, I would be picking up the phone and give NVIDIA a call right about now. If you're deep into the XR market, you will know that NVIDIA is a big proponent of OpenXR, and Apple is not really part of that ecosystem. So I was wondering when I saw this if it means Apple is going to get onto OpenUSD with Vision OS, but I'm not placing the poly market bet on that one just yet. Google, IBM, Nvidia, and Oracle are all potential targets in the conflict between Iran, Israel, and the US. These aren't the usual targets we're used to hearing about, but if you think about it, it does make sense. These companies combine, operate the digital infrastructure that powers the entire country and a good portion of the military. But what people don't talk about as much is that it isn't just the big firms that are targeted by adversaries. Small businesses are actually targets too. Just in a slightly different way, US businesses that participate in the Small Business Innovation Research Program, or SBIR, and the sister program, the Small Business Technology Transfer Program, STTR, are heavily targeted by foreign adversaries, primarily China, to acquire sensitive US technology and intellectual property. They're able to do this because there is kind of minimal due diligence done on who can get into this program and what talent the companies in these programs can use. Because of this, CCP linked venture capital firms and carefully constructed research partnerships have been able to siphon off decades worth of intellectual property research. And a recent study, this number actually made me feel a bit faint. Nearly $180 million in defense small business contract awards through this program went to firms with clear ties to China. That number is actually sound and probably conservative. It's just a reminder that you just can't business plan your way out of interacting with the global market. A French sailor accidentally doxed his warship's precise location in the Mediterranean by logging a 35-minute run on his Strava app. The ship he is aboard, or maybe was aboard, is the Charles de Gaulle. Is operating in the Mediterranean Sea near Cyprus. And while the carrier's general location is publicly known, the app provided exact coordinates. The French military described it as a dangerous act of imprudence and stated that appropriate measures are being taken in response. This actually isn't the first time this has happened with the Strava app. Back in 2018, the fitness app's heat map exposed sensitive information about several US military bases. When I read all of this, it just made me think, are we going to finally settle the debate that running too much is dangerous to your health? Probably not. But it does highlight the security concerns you should be aware of when you're using wearables and apps with tracking, because that's important whether you are in an active combat zone or if you are just actively combating traffic on your commute home. Here I was thinking we were done, but that was silly. Then we have to talk about how Meta shut down Meta Horizons only to bring it back a day later. Meta announced back in January that it was consciously uncoupling Horizon Worlds from Meta Quest. It gave everyone until January 30th to squeeze all of the juice out of the Horizon games, and then after that, they would only be available on mobile, not on the Quest headset. And as someone who develops extended reality applications, I think we got to this point because Meta didn't treat VR the same way it treats mobile and desktop. In 2026, software developers, software engineers know that when you're developing an application for the first time, you have to start with the smallest and most basic form factor first. Most of the time that's a phone, sometimes it's a watch, and then you retrofit that to a bigger scale. So you start with watch or phone, then you can go to desktop. But it wasn't always like that because we didn't always have mobile apps. And there is an entire generation of software developers that had to learn mobile first the hard way. Meta went in and actually made a very old and expensive mistake. They designed for VR first, which is incredibly difficult and complex, when they should have just started with mobile, which is where all of their users are hanging out anyway. When I was researching this story, I did see a theory pop up. The reason they are separating Meta Horizons out of Quest is because the next iteration of Quest headsets will actually be PC VR. So that means the Quest headset will tether to a computer. And if that is true, it likely means that Meta is seeing that the people that are in Quest and using Horizons are not casual social users who are looking to hang out. They are people that really care about resolution, fidelity, latency, and they're probably gamers, which makes sense. So if they're doing this big pivot, why did Meta backtrack and decide to bring Horizons back from the grave? We'll talk about that next. A tiny group of superfans convinced Meta to not pull the plug on their metaverse. Meta announced that it was shutting down Horizon Worlds on their VR headset, and as March 30th approached, they were getting ready to pull the plug. After that, the Horizon Worlds experiences would only be available on mobile. When they sent out that little reminder that, hey, this deadline is coming up, fans of Horizons spoke up, and Meta's CTO, Andrew Bosworth, announced that they have decided to keep all of the Horizon games that are already published accessible and available on Quest headsets, and that they will be there for the foreseeable future, but there are no new games coming to Horizons. And here's the thing, Horizon Worlds has never had more than a few 100,000 active monthly users, even though Meta spent $80 billion with a B dollars to develop it. In comparison, games like Roblox have 100 million daily active users. This revival to me largely looks like a PR move, which is fine. It is probably worth it for them to keep their most loyal fan base happy while they move on to whatever's next, whether that's mobile or PC VR like we talked about earlier. All right, if you found this news breakdown helpful, interesting, exciting, let me know by liking and subscribing to our newsletter. It is free on LinkedIn and over on Beehive. You can also subscribe here. And with that, we'll see you next time.